Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm Jessica Stitz. I'm a senior HR consultant at Turning the Corner. I've been in HR for 20 years. I know that's a really long time, and worked in 4 different industries. I actually really love HR, and I know a lot of people don't say that, but we get the opportunity to help businesses be more successful through positive employee relations and talent management and org development. So I really, really do enjoy it. We are excited to have you here to share with you some of our ideas on filling your open positions. So there's a lot of information, but we hope you leave here with some actionable items to help you in this really tight labor market. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about investing in upskilling and reskilling, know your values and purpose, optimizing your recruitment processes, and making the right offer, and then preboarding and onboarding. If you think of any questions, because there's a lot of stuff that we'll cover, put it in the Q&A, and when we get to the end, we will try to answer your questions. So, reskilling and upskilling. The first tip we're going to talk about is really based on internal recruitment. So you might be thinking, reskilling and upskilling, what does that have to do with filling our positions? But we're going to focus a little bit on the actual internal recruitment. So hiring from within your organization. You may have heard of upskilling or reskilling because many companies are now focusing on this to gain a competitive advantage. And honestly, in my time in HR, I think they're right that it really does give employers a competitive advantage if they do reskill and upskill their workforce. And you'll hear more and more really large organizations investing in this. You might also be thinking, what is upskilling and reskilling? Which is going to lead us to our first poll, which is, have you ever heard of upskilling or reskilling? Have you heard of both of them, or have you not heard of either one? I'll give you a minute to complete that. Great. So it looks like you've heard of both, so this won't be brand new. And we'll talk a little bit about it. So reskilling is learning an entirely new set of skills that will lead to a new career or role. An example of this, I like to give examples because that's how I learn. So hopefully that helps you too. But an example of this would be, say your accountant wants to become a sales manager. Can they utilize some of those skills that they have as an accountant? Yes, they can, but it still requires a whole new skill set to become a sales manager. And that's what reskilling is. Upskilling is to learn additional skills for your current position. So employees can either improve in their role or take on additional responsibilities. Simply put, it's the training of employees in new skills. And again, an example of this might be, say your accountant actually wants to stay an accountant. They love debits and credits, but they want to learn to utilize a new software that will make them much more efficient and reduce chances of errors and things of that nature. So they would learn how to utilize that new software, which is a new skill. Another example, which I'll use often in here, and you might get tired of hearing it, sorry, but is you have an engineer who's been an engineer 15, 20 years. They love being an engineer, but they decide that they want to become the lead engineer. So they're going to lead the engineering team. So they still utilize all of their engineering knowledge and skills, but they need to learn leadership skills to lead the team. So they'll upskill, they'll learn the leadership skills. So you might be thinking, why would I do this? Why would I spend the time helping our current employees gain new skills? Well, if you read our blog, it's still out there if you haven't, or listen to our webinar on the Great Resignation, you know that employees are looking for career development opportunities. If you can provide that to them within your organization, they don't have to look outside for other organizations. And I can tell you there's so many people right now who just want to gain more skills, and they love their companies, they love what they do, but they want to expand. They don't feel challenged. And so if you can provide that within, it's fantastic. And you're a lot more likely to retain your employees, especially in this market. I know a lot of you are thinking, okay, I see cost savings up here. How do I save money teaching my people all these new skills? Well, when you hire a new employee who already has the skill set, let's say our engineering lead that we discussed previously, they still need to learn about your organization. They still need to meet the people. They still need to learn how to be effective in that role. So even if they led an engineering team in another company, they still have to learn how to be effective in your company. They have to build trusting relationships with their current team. So it can take up to 6 to 12 months to really fully onboard a new employee. In that time, you would likely be able to train your current engineer on the leadership skills to be an engineering lead. Plus, if you really invest in your employee, you will have a really highly engaged engineering lead because they've been given an opportunity to master new skills and because you've invested in them. So according to a LinkedIn Learning study, 94% of employees say they would stay at a company longer if their company invested in their career development. I didn't make that up. That's 94% said they're much more likely to stay with an organization if they invest in them, which means you're much more likely to retain those employees you've invested in. So retaining your current employees means you are not spending the money recruiting and hiring new employees, which saves a significant amount of money. The average amount it costs to recruit, hire, and onboard new employee is about 6 to 9 months of salary, according to the Society of Human Resource Management. So 6 to 9 months of salary it costs to hire, recruit, and onboard a new employee. Some statistics say the organizational costs of employee turnover are estimated to range between 100 to 300% of the replaced employee's salary. So if you can prevent those good employees from leaving and having to replace them, I mean, you could possibly be saving up to 300% of their salary. It's a pretty large cost savings. Also, when you develop new skills in your workforce, it creates more agility and flexibility in your workforce. So investment and encouragement of training and development creates a workforce that is comfortable learning new skills and can quickly adapt to change. Having a versatile workforce is the ultimate form of workforce flexibility for organizations. So that's the why you should consider upskilling and reskilling your current workforce for internal recruitment. Now you might be thinking, oh, okay, this was great. You just told me how much money we'll save, how great it is for our organization, but how do we do it? So even for small and medium-sized companies, I know a lot of them don't have a training, some of them don't have an HR person, so they definitely don't have a training and development staff. But you don't have to have a sophisticated training and development program to offer upskilling and reskilling to your employees. Really, you don't. The first step is talk to your employees. I know that sounds really simplistic, but that really is the first step on upskilling and reskilling. So whether you're meeting one-on-one, having a performance review discussion, or just catching up with your employees, ask your employees about their career aspirations. And like I said earlier, I really like examples. When people are telling me how to do things, I always want an example. So here's an example of how a conversation could go. Manager, I know we just finished talking about your quarterly performance, but now let's talk about what you want to do in the long term here at our organization. Employee, I'm happy with what I'm doing, but maybe eventually I want to become the lead of our engineering team. Sorry, I told you I use that example a lot. Manager, what interests you about the lead role? Employee, I really like helping and supporting others, and I feel like I could really develop our new engineers because of all that I've learned in my 15 years of working as an engineer. Manager, I can definitely see that in you. What do you think would help prepare you for the lead role? Employee, I'm not really sure. I think I would need to shadow the current lead to learn what the role is really like day to day, to know what I would need to do to prepare for the role. The manager, I think this is a fantastic idea. Let me talk to the lead about having you shadow them and what skills they find most important in leading the engineering team. I think it would be a great idea also for you to work on a development plan to get you prepared for the position over the next couple of years. So sorry, I know that could be totally cheesy, but I learned from examples. So hopefully that helps you a little bit of just like how to get those conversations started with your employees if you haven't done it before. But some examples you could ask otherwise, besides my other cheesy one, is just ask where you see their career heading in the next year or the next 5 years, whatever makes sense. Or you can ask your employee, what do you think you could, how do you think you could make an even bigger difference here in our organization? And I really like this question. Do you think any of your skills or strengths are being underutilized here? That's a great question to ask people, especially right now, to learn if they feel like they're not using their full skill set. Sometimes employees think that they are interested, like being in a lead of a department, until they learn more about the responsibilities that go along with it. They may learn, what it really takes to lead a team and how exhausting it can be. Very rewarding, but can be really exhausting. And they may change their mind. But with our example of the engineer wanting to become the lead engineer, one of their ideas on the development plan was to shadow the current lead so they had a good idea of what's expected. Again, like if they shadow and they say, never mind, they may want to go a different way and develop a different career path. But if they're still interested in the role, have them put together a plan of what they need to learn, know, and the skills that are valuable to possess in the role. This is developing a career path or development plan. Employees want that, especially now, because they want to know they're headed in the direction they want to in the long term. And so have them start putting that together. If ultimately their goal is to become a lead, a supervisor, sales manager, whatever it is, have them start working on that. This really is a win-win-win for the employee and the organization. You're probably thinking, why did I use so many wins? But not only is the employee receiving development that they initiated and are leading, so you're not doing it as the leader, they're doing it, but you're also developing your talent pipeline. You're developing a succession or a successor for your engineering lead position. And you're also developing a backup for the lead. So even while this person, your current engineer, is learning to become a lead, they can step in and be the backup for the current lead if they're out for an extended period of time. So the benefits really do go on and on and on when you help your employees develop career paths or development plans. I know I touched a little bit on what a development plan is. I'm going to go just a little bit more into detail for you. So if you really do want to start utilizing this, you have more information of what it really looks like. You can always contact us and reach out to us, and we can help with that. But I wanted to give you a little more information here because I think they're so important in developing your people. So remember, the development plan or career path is for the employee to drive and not the leader. If you as the leader drive it and you give them a checkbox kind of thing, like do this, do this, do this, the employee's not near as invested in it as if they developed it themselves. Plus, every employee is unique, so what they're going to need is a little bit different. As leader, be there to guide them, answer questions, and support them. But it is theirs to own, and you're just really there for guidance and support. And I'll go into a little bit of like how to do it. It's laid out on the screen, but I'll just give you a little bit more information. So the first step really is for them to identify their goals. I've worked with a lot of people over the years that they say, I want to grow, but they don't really know what they want to do. That's the first step. And we as leaders, HR, we can't tell them what their long-term career goals are. Like we can give them advice based on what we've seen as their strengths and what they really enjoy, but they've got to ultimately decide what their career goals are. The second step is once they know their goal, again, we'll use our engineering lead. Once they know what their goal is, they need to gather information on what skills are needed to meet their goal. They can gather information by finding a mentor. They can shadow someone who's currently in the role. They can find someone outside the organization in their network who can sit down with them and tell them like what they need to know, what's really important. And they'll do the research on that, like on their own. So our engineer who wants to become a lead on the engineering team, they shadow the current lead and they figure out what skills are really important for them to learn to be successful in the position. And then the third step is once they know what skills and knowledge is important for the role to be successful, they need to identify and assess where they are currently with the skills and knowledge needed and what they need to develop. So there's a number of different ways that this can be done. A lot of times us as humans, we need a little help knowing how we're really perceived and what we could really work on. But let's say our engineer, they've got the knowledge. They've worked on all kinds of projects. They don't need help from an engineering standpoint. The staff they'll be supervising, they've worked with all those projects. They just need to work on their leadership skills and their soft skills. And maybe they already naturally have some, they have a high EQ, but they need to know specifically, like, where do I need to work? So things you could do is they could do a 360 review with their peers to get kind of feedback on how people currently view them and their soft skills. The next step would be to decide what skills they'll work on. So they get the feedback from the 360, and maybe it tells them they're not great at having difficult conversations. A lot of us are not. That they really need to work on that because, you know, as a leader, one, they're going to have to work with more contractors, project managers, other organizations, and their team, and they're going to have more difficult conversations. So this person, based on what they learned in their 360 and what skills are important, they decide that they need to learn how to develop others. They need to learn how to have difficult conversations. They need to learn how to give feedback because, again, sometimes that can be hard to do. And they also need to learn how to empower and encourage employees. So the next step is, don't worry, I'm getting towards the end of the development plan, that they need to decide how they're going to accomplish these goals. So great, they figured out this is what's really important. This is what I need to work on. Now they need to figure out how. Our engineer decided that they'll attend Turning the Corners leadership training. Perfect. But they'll also shadow the current engineering lead over the next 2 years to really figure out all the nuances. So they can, if that engineering lead gets promoted or retired, the current one, they can step right in. So I'm going to mention this a few times, and sorry, it's a little redundant, but I think it's so important. And they say the average person has to hear seven times to stick. So I'll at least tell you twice. But while they are learning and developing new skills, give them projects and tasks that allow them to practice their skills. If people learn something, I'm sure many of you have attended a training, read a book, and you're like, this is great information. But then you don't use it or you don't practice it, and And say 2 years down the line, you're like, oh, I know I took this training on how to have a difficult conversation and it laid out the conversation, but I don't know, I don't remember because you didn't practice it. So as humans, we forget it. So as your people are developing new skills, give them ways to practice it. So our engineer just learned about how to have difficult conversations, and someone needs to talk to a contractor about an issue that arose. And it's not going to be an easy conversation. Let the engineer practice having that difficult conversation with your guidance, of course. Like, don't just leave them to the wolves and say, oh, there you go, figure it out. Don't do that. That won't engage the employee very well, but be there, help them, practice the conversation with them, and support them through the process. And so then they'll have learned and practiced their skills. And then another benefit for you is you have somebody who can also go have those conversations when they need to be had. Lastly, they need to develop a timeline for accomplishing the goals they've identified. I know some of us will make goals, but we don't make it time bound. And then we're like, oh, we'll get to it later. So make sure when they're developing their development plan, if they don't have dates in there, like ask them to identify, some dates so they have something to work towards. And I know I said I would mention this a few times, so I just want to say it one more time. Continue the discussions and give them feedback, and let them practice the tasks and the skills that they're learning. They can be small, small tasks. It doesn't have to be these big planned out things, but as they're learning these new skills, give them opportunities to practice it. Maybe they're learning how to train staff and there's a training that comes up. Allow them to be the one who trains the staff. Or maybe your current lead is out for an extended period of time. They're taking a long vacation. They're out on a medical leave. Let them be the go-to, the cover, so they can practice being in charge. So do you see how this is good for your employee and good for the team? Hopefully, or I'm not doing a great job. But we're going to go to our third poll, or second poll, actually. Do you think reskilling and upskilling your workforce would benefit your company? Give you a minute to complete that. Okay, we'll end that there and share the results. So it sounds like you did agree with some of the stuff we were saying, that it would benefit your company to share or to start upskilling and reskilling. Fantastic. So the next question is who to develop. This always creates, wherever I worked in HR, I worked for a 32,000 employee organization. It's who should we work on developing? As you begin to think about career development conversations, remember, don't make assumptions about people and their career goals. Have conversations with all of your employees about their career aspirations, regardless of their tenure. We might think, somebody who's later in their career is not interested in learning new skills, but that might be totally inaccurate. I've worked with people who are further in their career, and they sometimes are the ones that want to learn the most and grow the most. And some people who are brand new in their career who want to not move very far beyond what they're currently doing. So don't make assumptions, talk to them about it. Also remember that some people need a little help thinking they can learn new things and will be successful at it. Some of us, when we were younger, were taught, like, don't do it unless you're 110% know you're going to succeed in it. And we want our people to take some risks. It's good for us and it's good for the organization. That doesn't mean just let them try all different kinds of things that would harm the organization, but let people take some risks and know that they're going to be okay and you'll be there to support them. Some people really are just scared that they might fail at trying something new. But with your encouragement and guidance, they're likely to master new skills. So encourage them. I'm going to give an example of this because I've seen it a lot in my career. There was a time when I worked with an employee who was really, really good at what they did. They could do it with their eyes closed because they'd been doing it for an entire decade. You could tell, like they said they didn't want to do anything else, but you could tell they were getting a little bit bored with what they were doing. They just weren't as excited about it, as they had been in the past. So I started talking to them instead of their manager about doing something different, or a position that had opened up that would have been a step, up for them so they could gain some new skills and take on some new challenges. And when we would talk to them about it, you could see in their eyes, they're like, no, I can't do it. So we try to explain to them, you know so much more than you think you do. And they said, no, I just don't know. I'm afraid like I would fail, or there's a part of the job I won't like. And we told them, you're an internal employee. This brings so much, especially to the part of the business that they were in. They bring so much knowledge about the business and position, and they can learn those specific technical skills. They had the aptitude, they could totally learn that. There were 3 jobs that opened up over like 6 months. They didn't apply. Finally, on the 4th one, the position posted, and I said to him, like, what's the harm in applying for the job? Just go through the process and learn more about the job to see if it's something you might actually like, because you don't know that much about it. They said, what if I go through the process and they don't choose me? And I was like, well, what if you go through the process and they do? And they're like, well, that's even scarier because they'll learn I have no idea what I'm doing. Anyway, that story could go on and on, but cutting to the chase, they applied for the job. They were hired, top candidate by far, and they became so successful in their new role. They were even promoted to the executive level within a few years. So the point of that story is sometimes people just need some encouragement and to know that someone believes in them. So think about someone who believed in you and pushed you. I don't know about you, but I had that. There were sometimes I'm like, I can't do that. But I had, a leader in my corner that was like, you could totally do that. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them. So would you be where you are today if someone hadn't believed in you or pushed you a little bit? Just a little food for thought. So I know you think you don't have time to add another task to your to-do list. Totally understand. We already have way more tasks than we have time. But think about how much time that it takes for you to recruit, hire, and onboard a new employee. The new employees aren't usually productive for at least 3 months. Who has time for that? Plus, with what we are recommending, this is mostly employee-led development, and you're just there to guide them, answer questions, and support them in the process. Also, doing this engages your employees because they know you're invested in them and that you care about them. You get way more out of employees who are engaged, and they're way more productive. So our question to you is, why wait? So I'm just going to pause for 1 second because that was focused on internal recruitment. So how to develop your people internally to fill those positions, especially some of those hard to fill positions. This next section, we're going to talk about, tips on recruiting externally. We know you can't always fill jobs internally. And sometimes it's not even the best decision. It would be better to bring someone from outside the organization to fill some of your roles. But it is a really tight labor market right now. We are seeing some changes, but it's really tight. So the rest of this presentation, we're going to talk about recruiting externally. The first thing we're going to talk about is your values and purpose. And we're going to do another poll. I'm sorry, I got a little poll happy when I was putting this together, but we're going to do a poll to find out if you currently have values, purpose statement, both or neither. And I'll give you a minute to complete that. Okay, well, in that, so it looks like most people do have values and purpose statement. Fantastic. Okay, so values are typically the guiding principles that are most important to your organization, but also translate into the individual employee. Some examples of companies' values could be compassion, creativity, reliability, honesty, simplicity. I'm going to laugh at the trust because we just talked about ours as a team last week. And I guess trust is a little bit of an overdone one, but yes. And then purpose is the why your company is in business. For example, Whole Foods is to nourish people and the planet. Southwest purpose is to connect people to what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, and low-cost airfare. So the Harvard Business Review found many high-growth companies use purpose to stay relevant in a fast-changing world. It enables them to overcome the challenges of slowing growth and declining profitability. So not only is the values and purpose super important for your recruitment, but it's also really good for business in general. And I know many companies, they've developed their values and purpose statements as another, like a check the box thing. We've got to have it. Everybody says to have it, so we have it, but they don't truly live it every day. You can ask people in the organization, they're like, we have it, but we don't know what it is, or it's posted in our meeting room. But more and more organizations are finding that the values and purpose really do matter, especially today with employees who want to belong to an organization that has purpose, that they believe in, and that shares their same values. And you may be thinking, okay, great, but what does this have to do with hiring and recruitment? I want to fill my positions. But employees now and your candidates now want to be a part of something that is purpose now more than ever. I guess living through a pandemic has made people really seek purpose and want to work for a place where their values align. A chairman of NT Growth argues that a values-based approach to hiring increases performance, enhances collaboration, reduces turnover, huge, improves morale, and creates a stable culture. So when you're hiring, if you hire people who don't value what you value or buy into your purpose, then they're not going to stick around long, either because they realize they aren't happy and the misalignment will lead to them being disengaged and having low productivity, or you will get frustrated because they aren't showing up how you want them to, and eventually you'll want them out of your organization. So we want to make sure your values and purpose are embedded in all of your recruiting material. So you know from the start, they buy into the purpose and that your values align. Include the values and purpose in your job description. Include questions in the interviews to find out if their values align and they buy into the purpose. And talk to your candidates about the organization's overall purpose, and show how the person's role fits into the bigger picture. Yes, we do need to know that someone has the aptitude or technical skills to do the job, but it really is as important as the values. There's numerous studies out right now on organizations who hire with a values-based approach, like making sure values align, and it significantly improves your recruitment and retention. So when an employee and organization value the same thing, it really is amazing what can happen. We do a lot of work around values with companies and individuals. Obviously, we think it's really, really important. So if you're interested in learning more, you can always contact us, but we're going to also do a webinar on that specific topic because we think it's so important early next year. So if you're interested in learning about that, like most of you do have values, but to make sure they are accurate and that you really do value those things that you had decided, join our webinar. So your recruiting processes is the next part we're going to talk about, and your hiring processes. So hiring for a job always starts with the job description. We know they're usually not fun to write. When we tell people, yeah, you need to write a job description, nobody jumps up and down and says, woohoo, I get to write a job description. No, I really haven't met one person that gets excited. But seriously, if you spend some time on them up front, it will save you so much time in the long run. So some questions to ask yourself are, when is the last time you updated a job description? Do you just keep reposting the same one you've had for 15 years because the person leaves and you just need to get it posted as soon as possible? Or do you take the time to make sure it's accurate to what the role really is? Does your description actually match the role? I can't tell you how many times I have asked like hiring managers and they're like, I don't know, it's fine, just post it. And it's like, well, you're going to be attracting the wrong candidates if we don't use the right updated job description that actually matches the role. So another question to ask yourself is, do you really need all 75 qualifications you've listed? Or does the person really only need 5 of those qualifications you've listed? Sometimes I've seen people put like, this person needs a PhD. And really it's a nice to have, but you don't need it. And if you put all those qualifications on there, you could be missing great candidates that could really do the job. So evaluate what qualifications you really need. Does the description talk about your company's values and purpose? And honestly, really, what does the job description say about your company? Does it give the impression you're a great place to work? Or does it give the impression that a candidate should be where? You know, you've all read some job descriptions that just say, you must do this, you must do that. And it's super dry. And it's all about what the organization needs the candidate to do and nothing about what you will get from that organization if you worked there. Candidates today really want to know what's in it for them. When we read job descriptions from organizations, that's all these, you must do this, you must do that to work there, and nothing about what the candidate will receive from working there, it gives us the impression that working there will be very one-sided. It'll be all about what the organization wants from the employees and nothing about what an employee gains from working there. So I would ask you to stop for a second and think, why would someone want to work at your organization? If you've got something, I would write it down and then start incorporating it in your job descriptions, because that's huge for candidates to know. This is what you'll get from working here. So the next thing we're going to talk about is sourcing candidates. So now that you know your values and your purpose, and you have an updated job description, let's talk about how to find candidates. So some people have heard this saying before and some haven't, but no longer is what we call the post and pray process going to work for most organizations. This is where you just post a job on your website and then you pray a great candidate finds it and applies while it's open. I mean, maybe if you're like Google, you can just post on the website and wait for applicants to come flooding in. But for most organizations, we really need to be more proactive and source for great candidates. Many employers, especially small to medium-sized businesses, utilize tools on LinkedIn and Indeed to find applicants. Sourcing this way can help you find not only active candidates who are looking to leave their current jobs, but also passive candidates who aren't necessarily actively looking to quit, but would be open to a great opportunity. So utilizing some of those tools, you could find, additional applicants, not just the ones that are actively looking. Also, when you're considering sourcing, think about where the job can be done. Can it actually be a remote job? If it can be done remotely, you can expand the geography that you're recruiting in. Also, I'm not sure if you're all located in Colorado, but that's where we're based. And it's a lot easier for us to recruit people who want to move to Colorado than some of our other states. So we have that going for us in Colorado. You can, at a job I worked at before, we were trying to recruit to Colorado, and we would go places, maybe the deep South in the summer and say, hey, you want to come work in Colorado? And it really helped. We got 50% of our employees from out of the state. So that's something to consider. Also, consider involving your current employees. I've seen this actually work really well. They're your best marketing tool. If they are happy and engaged, tell them you need their help finding new employees who would be great in the organization. Sometimes organizations decide to offer referral bonuses to incentivize their employees, but a lot of times you don't even need to do that. If you have happy, engaged employees and you tell them, we need to find some new people to join our team, and here's the roles. I mean, they're a part of the team and they want to help, so they will. Also consider, could you offer internships or apprenticeships partnered with the local schools? High schools, career centers, workforce development programs, community and technical colleges and universities. So this might not apply to all this, but I put an example of like Toyota technician programs. So they've had this since the 1970s, and they partner with local community colleges. And it's a 2-year intensive work-learn experience where students work in a manufacturing facility 3 days a week for 5 semesters. They have an 80% graduation rate, and they place all of their apprentice unless they decide to go into a 4-year college. So once they get done with the apprenticeship, they know they're getting placed within an organization. So the ROI on those programs are incredible. And according to the Society for Human Resources, 89% of manufacturers report they're experiencing talent shortages. So this could be a really great way for your organization to start finding and developing talent. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great, but they're Toyota, they're huge, they've got all these resources, they can put together programs. Totally understand that, but you can, at any size of your organization, you can partner with local schools, whether high schools, colleges, and offer an internship program. I'm going to give myself as an example here, because I actually participated in one of these work programs when I was a senior in high school. So I had enough credits. I didn't need to go to high school full day. So you could do what was called the work program. So I took a business class, and the business teacher partnered us with local businesses. So they found me a local business to work at part-time, which allowed me to develop business skills and gain experience. My actual internship was in accounts payable, and it wasn't a robust internship. Really what it was I would go to school in the morning and I would go there in the afternoon, and I just did whatever the accounts payable manager asked me to do. I did a lot of filing invoices. They had me subbing at the front desk for the receptionist at lunch. Like, they gave me whatever work. It wasn't a thought out, here's what you're going to learn, robust program, but I did gain a lot of knowledge and skills through it. When I completed my internship there in accounts payable, I think they saw how much more I cared about people than filing invoices. So they asked me to actually join the HR director part-time and fill in at the sales office when they were short-staffed. We had sales offices. So not only did they have an employee who could help out in 3 areas, I got experience as the intern in 3 different areas of business, which ultimately led me to my HR career. So I'm super, super thankful for that internship. I actually ended up working for that organization for 8 years. So I would say that that was a successful internship. Like, they didn't just spend all their time training me, and then I was out the door with these skills, but they didn't gain anything from it. They gained an employee who stayed with the organization for 8 years. So it can work out well, and it doesn't need to be a Toyota robust program. So the application process is the next part we're going to talk about. In today's competitive hiring market, employers need to put extra measures in place to keep prospective job applicants engaged. Like your job description, what does your application process say about your company? According to the Society for Human Resource Management, you could lose up to 60% of applicants if your application is too cumbersome or if someone has technical issues. This can deter qualified candidates and even damage your employer brand. So if people want to apply for it and it's too hard and it doesn't work, they might start questioning the organization itself and not just your application process. Give some thought into what a potential candidate might experience when completing your application. And actually, we highly recommend filling it out yourself. So say you've been there, you developed this application a while ago, you don't really know what it's like, fill it out yourself to see what people are experiencing. Maybe you'll learn that it is cumbersome or asking a lot of questions that you really don't need answers to. And job seekers today no longer have the patience for lengthy, complicated applications to attract top talent in today's tight labor market. You need to make the process simple. According to a study from a workforce demographics and research consulting firm, more than 60% of Generation Z job seekers will only spend 15 minutes or less on a job application. 15 minutes. Yeah, that's not much time at all. And then according to a Glassdoor study, 58% of job seekers look for new opportunities on their phones, and 35% would prefer to apply to open roles via their mobile devices. So is your application mobile friendly? Can they fill it out? Because what you might find is they can with other places, and they're going to do that. And they might think, oh, when I get to my laptop, I'll complete that application later, but they already applied to other jobs and they forget about it. So just to get applicants in today's market, your application needs to be short, not complicated, and mobile friendly. Also, if you want to stand out from the competition, can you add anything to the application process that will make the process more personal and less robotic? For example, do you send an email afterwards, like once they submit? Here's our process. A recruiter will review your application. We'll keep your application on file. Like, do they get anything saying you got their application and that you appreciate their time? So the interview process. Now that you've got some great qualified candidates that you've sourced and gotten through your fantastic application process, next comes the interview process. So we're going to do a poll. I told you I got a little poll happy here, but do you currently have an interview process that all of your hiring managers are aware of? Go ahead and end that. So we do. Yes, you do have interview processes. That's fantastic. If done effectively, the interview enables the employer to determine if an applicant's skills, experience, and personality meets the job requirements. You want to be really thoughtful in your interview process because bringing someone on your team is really important and impacts your whole team. But you also need to be really efficient, especially in today's market. If your hiring process takes more than a couple of weeks, you're most likely going to lose your top candidates. You will lose at least 50% of the candidates that you've interviewed if they haven't moved along in the process within 2 weeks. And that's even pushing it. Talking to our recruiter, they're like, I'd make it shorter than 2 weeks, but no more than 2 weeks. That also doesn't mean you can wait 2 weeks to contact them in between interviews. You have to stay connected with them so they know you're interested. Keep them informed of the next steps every step of the way. Also, do you go back and forth several times, like trying to find a time to interview? Is there software you could use like Calendly that just allows them to pick a time on your calendar to do the phone screen or the interview to get the process moving along? Do you have an interview process? I know some of you didn't complete the survey, but do you have it, or do you wing the process every time? If you don't have a process you follow with all candidates, you're not able to accurately compare candidates to one another, and you may come across as disorganized to your candidates. That doesn't mean you need to act like robots, like I must ask this and do it like that. You don't have to act like robots. But consistency really is key. As an HR person, I have to tell you that it's really important to be consistent in our interviews, and then there's certain questions you can't ask. But if your team or you don't know that, feel free to reach out to us and we can talk more about that. But we're going to focus on the recruitment piece here. So when establishing an interview process, know what you are looking for and that you and the team are aligned. And this is so important. I can't tell you how many times, we've been interviewing, but not until we were really getting together to talk about all the candidates did we realize we weren't all even aligned in what we were looking for the job, or that the hiring manager actually wanted something different than we all had expected. So don't let that be you. Make sure you're aligned up front before you start the process. Make sure you know what questions you're going to ask and that they're designed to show how the candidate displays the required skills in specific situations. Know how you're going to evaluate candidates. This is really, really important. It will help you a lot in the long run, because if you developed the criteria, as humans, we naturally want to hire people who are like us, right? But that's not necessarily good for the position or the team. So if you have already developed how you're going to evaluate it, you're much more likely to be unbiased and not just hire someone who's like you. I'll give an example. So I was participating in one of our leadership trainings, and we were having a conversation about this. And almost all the participants said at some point in their career, while they were doing hiring, they deviated from the evaluation process they had developed for the candidates because they really liked someone. So they're like, yeah, they didn't pass the assessment, or yeah, they didn't do this, but we really liked him. In all the cases, the person didn't work out in the long run and worked for him for less than a year. So determining how you're going to evaluate candidates is super important. I'm going to skip through a little bit of this just because I know we're getting close to time. So who will interview your candidates? Like, will you do a panel? Make sure if they're working on a team, you include them in the interviews, because it sets the person up for success ultimately if they're going to be hired, if the team already is bought in. So be very successful. Be very thoughtful in your hiring process and intentional. So everyone who's involved feels more confident since they understand exactly what the role is and how they should be evaluating the candidate. So that extra time you spend setting this up will create less work in the long run and greater success down the road. Always follow up with the candidates. It's super important to follow up. Even if you decide not to hire someone, make sure you reach out and thank them for their time, because down the road, you may want that person in a different position, and you want to to have maintained a good relationship. So always follow up. So the offer. Offer them a competitive salary. I know some people, they'll try to lowball because they want to save money or they expect someone to negotiate. This is the beginning of a relationship that they're going to have with your organization. So don't make them feel like they've been taken advantage of or they have to play games. Just make a competitive offer, what you think really is the right salary for them. And then if they negotiate, that's okay. If you offer incentives, provide information that it's easy to understand how the incentives work. Provide information on the benefits. You don't have to put it in the offer letter, but you can send them. A lot of places I've worked, we did a short summary, like a page or two of here's the benefits you receive working here. Here's your paid time off. Here's our paid holidays. Don't make them go searching for it or ask you, like provide that in the offer because it's all part of the picture of what they're going to decide to accept or not accept. If you're hybrid, talk to them about what that looks like. If you're remote, talk to them about what that looks like. Again, I'll just throw my little HR piece in here of if in the actual written offer, make sure to write it's an employee. They're an employee at will. So it's not construed as a contract. I couldn't help myself but put that in there. Sorry about that. And then pre-boarding. This has become so important and I'll be quick about this. You may be thinking filling positions has nothing to do with pre-boarding or onboarding, but it really is a big part of filling positions because organizations that do a good job with their pre-boarding have an 81% retention rate. Pre-boarding is the time, again, between when someone accepts an offer and the actual start date of the employee. So they haven't started, but they accepted. And it's really important in that time that you've created a process. You've reached out to them. You've told them things of what to expect day one. If they're coming in person, here's where you park. Here's what you'll do for lunch that first day. Reduce as much uncertainty as possible. And then with onboarding, if you don't have one, develop one. This really is so important. 22% of turnover happens within the first 45 days. And a lot of it has to do with someone's day one. First impressions for that new employee are really important on whether they're going to decide to stay or not. And new employees who go through a structured onboarding program are 58% more likely to be with the organization after 3 years. And 69% of employees are more likely to stay with a company for 3 years if they had a great experience. Did I say we believe onboarding is really important? Because we do. Actually, we're going to do a separate webinar on that topic as well, because we believe it's so important. And I know we're at our time, and I'm going to try to see if there's any questions, but we hope you've enjoyed our webinar on filling your open positions and you've gained some valuable information or thought-provoking information. We'll send you a link to fill out a survey to give us feedback. Do you feel like this was really helpful? Could it have been done different? What would you like to know maybe that we haven't covered in our webinars yet? And then I just want to say thank you for your time. I know it's really, really valuable. So hopefully you found some of these tips helpful. If there's anything we can do to support your business, we would be happy to help. This is really, truly the work that we love to do. And it doesn't look like there's any questions, but again, you can reach out to us at info@, and you can find our information on the website. But if we can help you with anything in any way, or if you have follow-up questions to this, don't hesitate to reach out. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.